Today on the Relationship Revival Show, I'm joined by Dr. Margaret Cochran. Dr. Cochran is a transpersonal psychologist, licensed clinical social worker educator, media personality, and author. She's been featured in a range of media outlets throughout the country, including BBC, ABC, CBS, NBC, and Fox affiliates, CBS Radio, and Media News Group, among many others. She's a passionate advocate for psychological and spiritual wellness. And Dr. Cochran has guided people from bedrooms to boardrooms on how to live happier, more fulfilling, and joyous lives. You're listening to the Relationship Revival Podcast with John DeBach, also known as Mr. Spirituality. That's me. I'm your host, giving you insights and guidance from over 10 years in the field of this amazing journey we call romance. On this show, I go over everything you need to know about how to get into a relationship, how to get the most out of a relationship, and sometimes even how to gracefully end a relationship without pulling your hair out and going crazy. And occasionally, I'm even joined by new and old friends who are also relationship experts to bring you guidance and wisdom with new perspectives. Thanks for stopping by. Dr. Margaret Cochran, thank you so much for being here and on the show.
Oh, thank you for having me.
You've been at this a little bit of time. You said, I think in our little pre-interview, about 40 years now.
Yeah, a good while.
And I'd love to talk to you about a couple specialties you have. We'll start with codependency. So, you know, it's a word that people hear because it's in the culture. It's in the lexicon of just the society. But I don't think a lot of people really understand its definition and how to recognize if you are or aren't even in a codependent relationship. And I think, especially when you're dealing with like a broad podcast audience, I think it's helpful if we actually define what it is first.
Okay. Well, I actually have another name for it. I also call it nurturance deficiency disorder.
Okay.
Because it affects people who have had disturbances in their attachment or their intimacy or their ability to give and receive nurturance as they were growing up. So they're particularly vulnerable to this particular condition. Basically, in a nutshell, what it is it's an addiction to pathological relationships.
An addiction to pathological relationships. Okay, that deserves a little bit more diving into.
Well, just as some people would be addicted to heroin or gambling or, you know, some other behavior, anything that can produce dopamine in the brain. I'm a brain geek. I'm self-confessed. It's true.
Okay.
But anything that produces dopamine in the brain can produce addiction. And depending on what kind of opiate receptors you've been given genetically, you are more or less prone to becoming an addict of whatever. And you can be addicted to multiple things. Basically, in codependency, it's the constellation of behaviors that does not allow you to be authentic, to be able to give and receive love in an egalitarian, equal kind of way. There's no healthy, loving reciprocity in those relationships. And one of the rules is that you must, sacrifice your integrity, as in any addiction, lose yourself to the other or the group system that demands your codependent behavior.
So let's boil it down in very practical terms. Let's say, I'm a husband listening to this and I'm like, okay, that sounds maybe like, what are some behaviors, like day by day behaviors, or, you know, like, does it manifest itself most in a fight? Or do you feel like I never feel completely attached? What is a sign that like your partner might be codependent, or, you know, something that you could see without any kind of jargon, like an actual behavior that you could see?
Yeah, pragmatic stuff.
Yeah.
Well, basically what it comes down to is that codependents exhibit a lot of people-pleasing behavior, but people-pleasing to the point where they sacrifice themselves, their energy, as I said, their integrity, their sense of self. They disappear into what they believe other people want.
Got it.
Another really clear characteristic is that they are really, really excellent at creating narratives to make unhealthy behavior be okay. I call it the whitewash technique. You know, you've got a windowsill full of wormwood and you say, oh yeah, look at all those holes. No, there's no holes there. I'll just paint it with white paint. Everything will be fine.
Got it.
But then the windowsill's still rotten.
Is it possible to be in a codependent or have a codependent partner with a partner who's healthy and recognizes it and says, hey, this isn't healthy, you need to stop?
It is possible, but relatively unlikely, because what would happen during the dating process is that the person would be so anxious about how you are, where you are, what are you doing. I'm hypersensitive to anything you're thinking and feeling. And anytime you ask me what I want, I don't know. Well, whatever you say, whatever you want, I may be filled with self-loathing. I would have a lot of trouble accepting compliments.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, what you would get is, if I'm the codependent, I would do my best to mirror you. And you don't want to be in a relationship with you. You want to be in a relationship with someone else. So as a healthy person with good boundaries, which is what codependents lack, you're going to say, this person is getting enmeshed with me. There's no separation between us. And you must have boundaries to have real adult authentic intimacy. It's vital.
So if a couple where there was a codependent partner comes into your practice as, I don't even know, do you still practice with couples?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So if they come into your practice and you recognize that someone's codependent, how do you then break the news to them?
Well, generally speaking, in couple situations, sometimes you separate out one person or the other to work on a particular
Correct.
issue.
Yeah. Yeah.
So rather than break the news, as you say, with both of them there, I would call him or her aside and say, listen, I'm seeing these things and this is what this means. I'm concerned for you. And either we need to do a little work together or you need to find another therapist and work on that.
Right.
And then bring that work back into the couple.
Got it. What type of partner does a codependent typically end up with? Is it narcissistic? Is it, I mean, because it sounds like it takes a special person to be okay with having a codependent partner and being okay with someone who is able to sacrifice almost all sense of individuality in service to themselves.
Absolutely. Yes. In fact, codependents attract predators. And so you get narcissistic personalities, antisocial personalities, sometimes avoidant personalities, because codependents are all about fixing everything for them, alcoholics, other kinds of addicts, people who have fetishes, people who like dangerous fetishes, people who have who are sexual abusers, who have been sexually abused. And the thing that's confusing to the codependent is, I don't know why I keep attracting these people. Mm-hmm. I'm a good person. I'm kind. Why do I keep attracting these people that are mean to me? And then when they are mean to me, and I use that in quotes, why can't I leave?
So what's the answer that you would give them? Because those are great questions. Why am I attracting them and why can't I leave?
Well, the first thing is we draw to us who we are. So if we are fundamentally wounded and have serious problems with boundaries, guess what kind of people we're going to attract?
Right.
The same. Okay. And why can't I leave? Because that's what I know. And that's what I have gone through my life believing love was. And my great, deep, deep, dark fear is that if this person, fill in the blank person, leaves me, I will have nothing. I will be alone. I will be in despair, because since I don't have a core sense of self, I require the other to feel like a person.
Such a big gap to fill. Gosh.
Well, it can be difficult. On the other hand, if you're ready to do it, mm-hmm. It's like any other process. It's you, first of all, you say, okay, this is what I'm dealing with. Right.
Yeah.
And then you begin to break it down into the different pieces, and you begin to learn new coping mechanisms, new ways. Like, for example, one thing that codependents have a lot of trouble with is accepting compliments.
Yeah.
And one of the first things I teach them is, I'll ask them, do you give compliments? Oh, yes, all the time. I give compliments. Mm-hmm. And I said, how do you feel when you give compliments? Well, good. I like doing that. Okay. So what do you suppose people feel when they give compliments to you? Oh, well, I Suppose they feel good. Okay. And so when you take the compliments and you throw them back in their face and say, oh, no, 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 that's not true. How do you think they feel? Oh, I guess not very good. So you see, as you begin to explore with the person, what does your behavior really mean?
Mm-hmm.
You learn the value and importance of receiving a compliment, not only for the other person, but also because in all of us, we have what I call the secret treasure box. And in the secret treasure box is where we keep all the good things that people have said and have happened to us. And so when the bad days come, we can open the treasure box and say, okay, I'm still loved. It's going to be okay. I'm going to be all right. Well, for a codependent, they don't have a treasure box. So any little thing that comes along is a huge disaster, and they have no comfort. So what I teach them is those compliments that you've been refusing, we're going to build you a treasure box, an emotional treasure box. You're going to put those in there, and then when you need them, they're there for you, support you and buoy you. Because being selfish allows us to be selfless. Let me repeat that. Being selfish allows us to be selfless. Selfish is separate from self-centered. Okay, so if I'm selfish, that's what's called healthy narcissism. I know who I am, what I need. I make sure I get my needs met, and then I can meet your needs joyfully and without resentment or frustration. But if I'm selfish, there's no room for anybody but me. Everything is about me, and life is pretty much of a misery. So teaching codependents how to receive, how to be selfish, teaches them how to be able to attach and connect differently than they've ever been able to before.
Yeah.
It's beautiful to see. It's a beautiful thing.
When you're dealing with someone who kind of makes it over the hump and, you can get them there, how likely is it, because they have a partner now that they maybe start recognizing as being a predator or being a narcissist, how likely is it for that relationship to actually survive versus it kind of dissolving?
Well, it really depends on the partner. Sometimes the partner, for example, let's say we have someone who has narcissistic traits versus a full-blown narcissistic personality.
Sure.
Now, a narcissistic personality you can't fix, but narcissistic traits, yeah, you can correct those.
Right.
Okay. So let's say I'm a codependent and I've chosen someone with narcissistic traits, and that person begins to see me grow and change and ask questions and receive compliments and actually have needs and feelings of my own. They're going to do one of two things. They're either going to get really upset and say, you need to stop therapy. You're turning into someone I don't like. Or they're going to say, wow, I need to catch up here.
Yeah.
Because I love this person and I really want to stay connected with them. But when you go into therapy of any kind, it's either going to increase love and positivity in your life, or you're going to see a lot of people that have to fall away because they're not healthy. It's like sending an alcoholic in recovery back to a bar to drink with their friends. It doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah. So I could see why you have such a connection to addiction from codependency, because it is in effect a form of addiction, right?
It is.
So let's talk about the way the brain works and addiction, and kind of shift gears a bit and talk about maybe a substance abuse addiction, some kind of more what people associate naturally when they hear the word addiction,
right?
How that affects relationships and how that manifests.
Well, there are three main defenses in addiction of any kind: rationalization, minimization, and denial. So
let's repeat those. So rationalization, minimization, and denial.
Okay. So rationalization is when you have an explanation for everything. Well, this happened and blah, blah, blah. Minimization is, well, I only did that. I mean, I only broke her arm. It's not like I broke both legs too. Okay. Hey, I've heard that one. Trust me. I've heard that one. And then there's denial, which is, yeah, you're crazy. This isn't happening. I don't know what she's talking about. We're getting into gaslighting now, yeah. Right? I'm messing with your reality. So, when you cross over, there's use, then there's abuse, and then there's addiction. And when you cross over from abuse into addiction, the big three kick in a big way. Because when you're still in abuse territory, you're still reachable. I can still say, hey, you had an awful lot of cocktails last night. I'm concerned. I've seen you do this, And the other person says, oh yeah, maybe I did. Maybe I need to kind of, look at that. But if you're in addiction, you're not seeing that. You're picking on me. You're being mean to me because I've concocted this whole narrative around maintaining that dopamine I so desperately need. And what begins to happen once you've crossed that threshold into addiction is you need your fill in the blank, not just for the dopamine, but to feel normal now.
And is it one of those things where the person is aware of what they're doing on some level, or has the brain kind of taken over and it's driving the train at that point?
Well, that's an interesting thing. I'm sure you've heard of interventions. Yeah?
Sure.
Okay. Well, when you do an intervention, you do it by surprise. You don't let the person know that it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And the reason that you do that is you're attempting to shock the brain so it's not using the big three.
Yeah.
And you sneak in under those and they can hear you for a minute. I love you. Please get help. I love you. You're destroying our family. I love you. I don't know how to reach you anymore. And 50% of the time, whenever I do one of those, it's a 50-50 shot. I never know going. I mean, I've done interventions at the bedside in the hospital where the patient was yellow with jaundice from drinking.
And it's still,
her father had died of his disease.
And it's still a coin toss.
And it's still a coin toss. Good news is in that case, she was strapped to the bed with wires and tubes so she couldn't get away. Yeah. But it is intellectually, emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, such a coin toss. I don't know what's going to happen, ultimately.
So it does. So that's a great. It's a great kind of example that you put in putting it in the frame of context of an intervention. If I could just going back to the question, are they aware of it or not? So it's kind of in a gray area. So it's like they are aware of it, but at the same time, they can't stop it.
Yes. If their defenses are switched on, they're not seeing what they're doing. If you somehow shock them into getting underneath them, they can realize, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And they're shocked and usually move to tears.
Right.
What have I done? What's happened to me? How did I lose myself in all of this?
Right.
Which brings us back to codependency because it's that same feeling. Where am I? Where have I gone?
Mm-hmm.
How do I find myself and get myself back again?
So it's almost like if you're, I've never put it in this phrasing, but an addiction is when you have a codependency on the substance.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It becomes your new best friend. Some addicts have written about their romance with their substance.
Yeah.
Like a lover.
I remember F. Scott Fitzgerald, he wrote an autobiography, and it was part of a collection of short stories. I'm like, how did he have an autobiography? Because I saw it in the table of contents when I was looking for it. And if you open it up, his autobiography lists a year and his favorite drink of that year, and that's it. And it goes through about 20. It's almost like a poem, and it's like French 62s at this hotel, or the whiskey in this bedroom, and it's like that was his life. That's what marks the passage of time. Is like, what am I drinking this year? Which is sad, but
it's very sad.
Such a shock to the system that I laugh out of nervousness. It's like, what do you do with that information?
Yeah. Well, you watch someone slowly disintegrate. The alcohol addiction, alcohol can also be used as can THC, the active ingredient in marijuana, can be used to mask symptoms of other things. So if the person is feeling bad, say they're lapsing into depression, they'll start using alcohol or marijuana in order to not feel so bad.
Sure.
The problem is, of course, that alcohol is a depressant.
Right.
So, if you sober up at all, you start to feel really bad because you got your depression and you got your hangover and you got it's not a good thing.
Not good.
But alcohol is so powerful that it is one of the few substances that can kill you in withdrawal.
Yeah. I think the only two substances that can do that is alcohol and benzodiazepines.
The opiate class. Right. Yeah. And for most, you feel crunky.
Right.
You don't
but you'll
feel
survive,
real terrific.
Right.
but you'll survive. But with alcohol, if you stop suddenly and you're already in the addiction phase, you can, it's like putting 220 through 110.
It just doesn't work.
All the wires, everything frizzes, you seize and die. So when people are in that place, I say, look, we got to get you into detox.
Yeah.
You can't do this by yourself.
Yeah.
And often they don't want to. They're very scared. They cannot imagine their lives, as a codependent can't. They cannot imagine their lives past this point.
Yeah. Well, so I was gonna ask you. So you said it's a coin toss on the intervention.
Mm-hmm.
What happens if they walk out of the room, or it's not successful? What's usually the next step after that? Do the relationships start to dissolve? I mean, what's appropriate action to take? Like, let's say it's my wife and she says no. At that point, what are you left with?
Well, in the intervention process, part of what the participants do is they list their bottom line. If you choose not to get well, this is what I will do going forward. And that varies person to person. But basically the options are you leave the relationship, you stay in the relationship and lead what are called parallel lives, where basically you just don't have much to do with each other. Or you sink deeper into your own codependency and try and fix the other person.
Which is like the bad option that they shouldn't choose.
Well, not only is it a bad option, you'll be spectacularly unsuccessful.
Right.
You can't fix it. You cannot control the thoughts, feelings, and behaviors of other people with your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. And if you don't remember anything else we've talked about, please remember that one, because that's crucial in any relationship, in any situation. You can't do it. It's not possible. Just any more than somebody can get well for someone else or sober for somebody else. It has to be an intrinsic thing versus an extrinsic thing, or you won't have long-lasting success. Yeah.
I have the same kind of motto in my practice. I say the only thing you can control in this life is yourself. That's it. Period. Yep. If you think you're, and people come to me saying, can't I fix the relationship? I'm like, you can fix your approach to the relationship.
There you go. Very good. Yes.
But I don't think you could fix it without them also wanting to fix it. I mean, sometimes the inspiration of seeing you transform is enough to get them to kind of wake up, but it's not a guarantee.
And I always reassure people, though, here's the deal. If this relationship falls away because you've grown and become healthier, then you are uniquely equipped to go out and get a very different relationship the next time. Something that is healthy and is strong and does have potential for the future.
Absolutely. The same problems they have in this relationship, if they don't fix them, they're just going to follow them to the next relationship. So it's
everywhere you go, there you are.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. If you have someone who comes to you and says, I just broke up with my boyfriend and I've noticed that he's the third boyfriend, it's the third long-term relationship I've had where they're suffering from an addiction. What's wrong with me? What would you do in a situation like that? How would you approach it? Because that sounds like it's right up your alley.
And what I do, because I run into that a lot, as you might guess, is I say, there's nothing wrong with you. You are responding very well and skillfully to what you've been taught to do. Mm-hmm. You pick someone who's wounded, and then you spend all your time and energy and integrity trying to, quote unquote, fix them.
Right.
And it will fail. Wash, rinse, repeat.
Right.
So it's not that there's something wrong with you. It's simply that you have a set of standards and behaviors and beliefs that is going to take you down a certain road. If you want to go down a different road, I can teach you that. No problem.
Yeah. Yeah, that's wonderful. I'll disclose a little something personal. So it's funny. I had a great upbringing growing up. Thank God. I had great parents and stuff. And to the point where the fix it thing, I wasn't fixing anything in my home, but there was almost this guilt complex of like, I have it so good that I dated women that needed help. And it came to a head at one point in my 20s. It was the most painful relationship I had, where I was used for like a year. And the person was always, quote unquote, sick or dealing with a physical ailment that wasn't really there because she wanted to feed into it on a subconscious level. And at a certain point in the relationship, I realized I don't want to do this anymore. And I never dated that way again. So I was really looking back in hindsight, being 2020, I was grateful for this painful relationship because I was able to say that needs to just stop. And so I started dating healthy people from that point forward until I met my beautiful wife. But what I did notice was there was some scar tissue in the marriage where now if my wife gets sick, I'm just like, get over it. Because it's like, come on, I don't want to hear about it. So it's like, it's been a process getting back there of like, oh no, I got to be the Jewish mother now. I forgot I'm still a person. So.
Well, let me say, I love that you brought up that story because it is something that I deal with when I work with healers quite a bit. And healers want to heal, don't they? I mean, we don't actually heal people. We facilitate their healing.
Absolutely.
They do the heavy lifting, right? Our job is to provide a container for them. But could disclose something. My nickname when I was a little girl was Doc. People have been coming to me since I can remember with their problems.
Yeah.
And somehow I always kind of knew what to do. Well, when you are in a healing frame of mind, or if you are a teacher or, something like that, teachers tend to marry children. Healers tend to choose partners who are broken. Unless there's been someone or something as the experience you had that made you realize, oh, yeah, this is what I do for work, but I don't marry this.
Right.
Okay. And once you get that boundary straightened out, it empowers you tremendously.
Oh, yeah.
But as long as you don't have that boundary, you're kind of sawed in half and you're weakened.
Yeah. It's so funny. I remember like I have brothers and I have other people. And when I was dating and they started seeing me, and when I got engaged, they're like, well, what should I look for in a woman? Because everybody was such a big fan. I said, don't pick anyone who's sick. Like that was the first. I was like, it became my stance. Like life's too short. You got to pick healthy people. It was such a 180. God, Dr. Margaret Cochran, you've been amazing to listen to. I absolutely loved everything you said. I think anyone who's dealing with addiction and codependency, I mean, a lot of those are when clients come in to see in my private practice and they have those issues, they're too acute for me. It's not my specialty. So I have a feeling I'll actually be sending you some people sometime in the future, because I think that, the way you talk about it and the expertise and the brain knowledge you have about it is it's such a relief. Sometimes just having the information and knowing what's going on between our ears is so empowering, and that's where that transformation starts. I thank you so much for being with us.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and I want to tell you I had so much fun, and the reason I did is because I see the joy in you.
Oh, thank you.
You love what you do and you love what you're doing.
Yeah.
And that's really what it's all about.
Yeah. Best job I ever had.
I agree.
Well, you could find Dr. Cochran at drcochran.com. You're in the San Jose area, aren't you?
I am, yes.
But I'm sure you'd see clients like everybody else since COVID a lot virtually these days too, right?
I do, yeah.
The only thing they're going to miss out on is I know you have a couple therapy dogs in the office.
I do.
We're big dogs.
Well, they wander through periodically to check in with people, when they're here.
All right, at least you get a glimpse of them if you can't pet them.
Yeah.
Thanks again, Dr. Cochran. If you're interested in learning how to get the absolute most out of your romantic relationships, then you're in luck, because I have put together a free workshop or masterclass, if you will, about 3 secrets that people in happy relationships have discovered. You can view the workshop at mrspirituality.com/3 secrets. Again, it's completely free. Just go there and watch it. It'll help you on your journey, give you some wisdom, some things to think about. The website again is mrspirituality.com/3 secrets. That's mrspirituality.com/3, the word secrets. It's all yours. Enjoy.